The noise outside felt like the ocean crashing again and again. It did not stop. It did not slow down. Every cheer, every shout, every clap pushed through the walls and landed heavy inside the chest of the man standing alone backstage. It was not just sound. It was pressure. It was expectation. It was 1,000 hearts beating together, while his tried to keep its own rhythm. He stood still, right in the middle of the narrow space, as if moving even an inch might break something fragile inside him. Around him were thick black cables coiled on the floor like sleeping snakes. Dark curtains hung from metal rails, heavy and worn. The faint smell of dust mixed with warm metal filled the air. The kind of smell that only lived behind stages and never reached the crowd. The stage lights leaked through small gaps in the curtains, flashing bright for a second, then fading away. Light and shadow played on the walls, like restless thoughts. Time felt strange here, too fast and too slow at the same time. He wore the same leather jacket he had worn for years. It had traveled with him through cities and silence. The sleeves were soft from use, shaped by his arms, marked by nights that never made it into memory clearly. The jacket had seen more shows than he could count, more empty rooms than full ones. Under it was a simple dark shirt, nothing special, nothing meant to impress. His jeans were worn at the knees, faded where he had knelt, sat, waited. His boots were scuffed, but clean. He always cleaned them before a show. It was a small habit, one thing he could control when everything else felt uncertain. His hands rested by his sides, but his fingers kept moving. Small taps, small shakes. They brushed against the seams of his jeans, then curled inward. He tried to stop them, but they moved on their own, guided by nerves rather than choice. His breathing was slow at first, careful, then suddenly too fast. His chest rose and fell unevenly. He closed his eyes for a moment and counted quietly in his head, the way he had learned long ago. 1, 2, 3. The noise outside grew louder, like the crowd sensed something was about to happen. Somewhere beyond the curtain, thousands of people were waiting. They had paid for tickets. They had waited in long lines under open skies. They had talked, laughed, argued about songs. They were ready to see something big, something loud, something unforgettable. For them, this night was excitement. For him, it was everything. But standing here, alone, with only shadows for company, he did not feel big at all. He felt small. Memories came without asking. They always did before shows. Faces from the past floated up without warning. Old rooms with low ceilings and bad sound. Long drives with no clear destination. Only maps folded too many times. Nights where only a few people showed up and stood far apart. Nights where no one clapped at the end, and silence felt heavier than booze. Nights where he smiled on stage, bowed his head, and questioned everything the moment he stepped off into the dark. There was a time when people laughed at the idea of him. Standing on a stage like this, big lights, big crowd, big city. Australia felt far from where it all started, far from the places where doubt lived openly. Back then, even playing a small room felt impossible. Even being heard felt like asking for too much. Someone once told him he would never last. Said he did not look right, did not sound right, did not fit into whatever shape success was supposed to have. Those words stayed longer than they should have. They dug in quietly and waited. Even now, years later, they still found space inside his head, whispering when things got quiet. A stagehand walked past him quickly, carrying something heavy in both arms. Their footsteps echoed briefly, then disappeared. They nodded at each other. No words were needed. Everyone backstage moved with purpose, with jobs to do and places to be. Everyone except him, it seemed. He felt frozen, like if he moved too soon, something important would crack. He leaned his back against the wall and tilted his head slightly upward. The wall was cold against his skin through the jacket. It helped. Cold meant real, solid. It pulled him out of his thoughts and back into his body. He needed that reminder more than ever. This show mattered, not because of the size of the crowd, not because of the city or the country or the year, but because of everything that came before it. Every wrong turn that still led forward. Every doubt that tried to slow him down. Every night he almost quit, but didn't. Every moment where he chose to keep going, even when there was no clear reason to believe. He thought about the people who were not here. Some had walked away quietly. Some had stopped believing, not out of cruelty but out of tired hope. Some had stayed behind in places he no longer lived, carrying memories of a version of him that no longer existed. He wondered if any of them would believe this moment if they could see it, if they would recognize him now. The noise outside shifted. It changed shape. A new sound rose above the rest. Anticipation, the kind that lives right before something begins, the kind that holds its breath. His chest tightened. What if tonight went wrong? What if his voice failed him at the worst moment? What if the crowd felt nothing at all? He had played many shows, stood under many lights, faced many rooms, but the fear never left. It only changed shape. Fear was quieter now, less sharp, but heavier. It carried weight from the past, and uncertainty about the future. A faint reflection caught his eye. A metal case nearby showed part of his face, bent slightly by scratches and age. He stepped closer and looked at himself. The light was dim, but enough to see the lines around his eyes, shaped by years of squinting into bright lights. Enough to see the tiredness that no sleep fully erased. Enough to see strength that did not come from winning, but from surviving. He did not smile. He did not need to. This moment was not about pretending. He remembered a night long ago, when the power went out, the room had gone completely silent. No lights, no sound system. Just his voice and a few people standing close. Unsure what to do, he sang anyway. His voice shook. It was imperfect. But he kept going. Not because it sounded good, but because stopping felt worse than continuing. That memory stayed with him. It reminded him why he started in the first place. Not for crowds, not for applause, not for approval, but because music was the only place where he felt honest, where nothing had to be explained. A voice called out from somewhere down the hall. Short, clear, a signal. 5 minutes. His heart beat faster, strong enough that he could feel it in his throat. He rolled his shoulders slowly, feeling the jacket move with him. It fit like part of his body now, like armor, but softer, like something that protected him without hiding who he was. The noise outside rose again, louder than before. The crowd was ready. The moment was coming whether he was or not. He thought about walking away. The thought came quick, like it always did. Just for a second. A small door opening in his mind, offering quiet and safety, but he closed it just as fast. He had walked toward this moment for too long to turn back now. He took a deep breath, then another. He stood upright and stepped away from the wall. Each step forward felt heavy, like walking through thick air, but also right, familiar, like walking into a storm he already knew how to survive. The curtain moved slightly as someone passed through. A flash of light spilled across the floor, bright and warm. He could hear the crowd clearly now. Individual voices mixed into one living sound. He could feel them, even without seeing them. This was the edge, the space between before and after. He paused there, not because he was afraid, but because moments like this deserved to be felt, fully and honestly. He placed one hand briefly over his chest. Not dramatic, not for anyone else. Just grounding, just real. Whatever happened next would happen. He could not control the crowd. He could not control the noise. He could not control the outcome. He could only control the truth he brought with him. And tonight, that was enough. The signal came again. He stepped forward. He stepped forward. The moment his foot crossed the line between shadow and light, the noise changed. It did not get louder. It became closer. The stage lights washed over him, warm and bright, almost blinding at first. For a heartbeat, he could not see the crowd at all. Just a sea of light, just heat on his skin. He blinked once, then again. Slowly, shapes formed, faces, movement, hands raised in the air. Thousands of people, packed together, all looking toward the same place, toward him. His chest tightened, but his feet kept moving. Muscle memory took over. He walked to the center of the stage, each step steady, even if his heart was not. The floor vibrated slightly beneath him, alive with sound and energy. He stopped where he always did. For a brief moment, everything felt suspended. No past, no future. Just this. The crowd roared. The sound hit him hard, like a wave breaking against his body. It pushed into his ears, his chest, his bones. He felt it everywhere. He had heard crowds before, but this was different. Not louder, deeper, like they were not just watching, but waiting. He looked out across the room, so many faces, some smiling, some shouting, some quiet eyes wide, people of all kinds, all ages, all standing together for this shared moment. They did not know his doubts. They did not know his fear. They only knew what they hoped to feel, and suddenly, he understood something. This moment was not about proving anything, it was about giving something. He reached for the microphone. His hand shook slightly, but he wrapped his fingers around it anyway. The metal was cool, solid, real. He took a breath, slow and deep, and let it settle inside him. When he spoke, his voice surprised him. It was steady, not loud, not forced, just honest. He did not say much. He did not need to. A few simple words, a greeting, a quiet thank you. The crowd responded, warm and loud, like they were answering a question he had been holding inside for years. He stepped back. The band behind him came into focus. Familiar shapes, familiar presence. People he trusted. People who had stood beside him through good nights and bad ones. They exchanged small looks, quick nods, no words. Everything that needed to be said had already been said long ago. The first note rang out. It cut through the air clean and sharp, like a light turning on inside his chest. Then the next. Then the rhythm settled in, steady and sure. The music filled the space between him and the crowd, closing the distance. It wrapped around him, carried him forward. His body moved with it naturally, without thought. His shoulders relaxed. His breathing slowed, and when he began to sing, something changed. The fear did not disappear. It faded. His voice rose, clear and strong, shaped by years of struggle and survival. It was not perfect. It did not need to be. It was real. Each word carried weight, not because of technique, but because of truth. He watched the crowd respond. Some sang along. Some closed their eyes. Some raised their hands higher. Some simply stood still, listening. The music reached them in different ways, but it reached them all. He felt it too. With every song, something heavy inside him began to loosen. Old doubts slipped their grip. Old failures lost their sharp edges. He was not fighting the moment anymore. He was inside it. Between songs, he caught his breath. The crowd filled the space with cheers and applause. Not polite, not distant, alive, grateful. He smiled then. Not a wide smile, not for show. A small one, real, the kind that comes from relief. He remembered nights when silence followed the last note. Nights when he packed up in quiet rooms and wondered if he would ever feel this. Standing here now, under these lights, he understood that those nights mattered too. They were part of the road that led here. The show moved forward. Song after song, the energy grew. The lights shifted colors. Shadows danced across the stage. Sweat ran down his face, but he did not wipe it away. It was part of the work. proof that he was present. At one point, he stepped back and let the crowd sing a line on their own. Their voices rose together, imperfect but powerful. He listened, standing still, letting the sound wash over him. His eyes burned, not from the lights, from something deeper. He thought about the version of himself who once stood in empty rooms, gripping a microphone with shaking hands. He wished he could tell that version to keep going, to hold on, to trust the quiet belief that refused to die. The music slowed. A softer song began, one that always carried weight. The room shifted with it. The crowd leaned in, listening more closely now. The lights dimmed slightly, warmer, gentler. He sang with care, each word placed softly, like setting something fragile down. The song was not about winning or losing. It was about staying, about choosing to remain even when leaving felt easier. He saw faces in the front rows, lit just enough to read emotion. Some smiled through tears. Some held hands. Some nodded slowly, as if the words matched something inside them. He realized then that the music no longer belonged only to him. It belonged to everyone listening. The final notes faded out. Silence followed, just for a second. Then the room erupted. Applause thundered through the space. Cheers echoed off the walls. People stood, clapped, shouted, not because they were told to, because they felt it. He stood still, letting it happen, letting himself receive it. For years, he had learned to keep his guard up, even during success. But tonight, he lowered it just a little. He bowed his head, not in pride, in thanks. As the show reached its end, he felt a calm settle over him, the kind that comes after something important has been given. He knew this night would pass. The lights would go dark, the crowd would go home. Life would continue, with all its uncertainty, but this moment would stay, not as proof of success, as proof of survival. He took one last look at the crowd. He memorized the feeling, the sound, the warmth. He carried it with him as he stepped back, away from the lights, toward the shadows once more. Backstage felt quieter now, different. The noise outside softened as the curtain closed. The walls returned, the cables, the familiar smell of dust and metal. But something inside him had changed. He leaned against the wall again. This time, it did not feel cold. It felt earned. He closed his eyes and breathed, slow and steady. There would be more shows, more doubts, more nights where fear knocked quietly at the door. But now, he knew something he had once only hoped. He belonged here, not because the crowd said so, but because he stayed.